Oh, today's going to be fun. If you like Tolkien, or if you're Christian, today's going to be an interesting one. I essentially found an essay comparing Melkor and Lucifer, and it's very fascinating. It's very fascinating. Tolkien was such an interesting man. A lot of people don't understand how deeply his beliefs impacted the development of the Middle-earth universe. Oh, just wait. Today, they're gonna realize. Today, what we're gonna get into has nothing to do with conversion of faith. It has nothing to do with that. And it might have seemed implied by what I said there that, like, there is an ideal of conversion. I don't believe that. But what I'm saying is that it may have inadvertently opened my perspective to some of the Christian beliefs that I always looked at as just, like, kind of ridiculous. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? But then again, if I'm going to be accepting of those types of concepts within a fantasy universe like World of Warcraft, it's important to be able to compare and contrast them to the real life thing. So it's just important, I think. Some of the things as far as, like, the creations of God being imperfect and kind of, like, exposing the inherent flaw that was pride that led to Lucifer's downfall and stuff, and, like, the fact that Lucifer is an expression of the imperfect nature of God's creations because he as God is the most perfect thing. How could anything else be as perfect as him? Right? So it's kind of like Azeroth in a sense, you know? How could anything be as perfect and as one as Azeroth? You know, she's the creator. The violent nature of her children is an expression of the flaw in her design, and that, like, nothing can be as perfect as Azeroth, you know? So one could link it like that and kind of make those correlations, and, you know, and I think that Farim's writings really, really hint at Christianity, like, very heavily. Especially because it does tackle the nature of the designs of the first ones, them being born in a state of denial because of the very manner of their existence, you know? How could they... The first ones parceled out their gifts, but gave no child any of them. Of course, they would fight. Their very existence is one born of, you know, denial. It's pretty interesting, and we're gonna get into those concepts applied to Lucifer. We're gonna get into those concepts applied to Melkor, those concepts applied to Sargeras, and from that, maybe just see, not necessarily maybe figure anything out, but just kind of see where some of this inspiration is rooted from at its core. Now, this isn't the first time I've looked at Tolkien before, of course, but it is the first time that I've ever looked at it in an essay format in terms of someone comparing a Tolkien character like Melkor Morgoth to Lucifer Satan. So it'll be different in that we will be using someone else's more scholarly perspective in order to draw the correlations, because I'm not a Christian. I don't know really what's written in the Bible, to be honest. I know very vaguely about some concepts like the burning bush, which is a thing in World of Warcraft, by the way. So we're gonna maybe talk about that. So anyway, it's just framed from a different perspective. It's not to say that it is the only one or the correct one, but when you look at the kind of father of fantasy in Tolkien, and you start to look at how someone like Chris Metzen, who's very much a fan of the Tolkien universe, which is made very fucking evident. You guys are going to realize that today, if you haven't already, but I think that there's tons of evidence that obviously makes people think that. And that'll be a fun time. Thrall is a Moses character as well. Well, again, it's one of those things where, like, this essay that I was reading is like 140 pages long, and I think I'm like 40 pages in. So I've like read through like the first part of it that makes the connections between Melkor and Lucifer, and I have not got past that part. So this will be like kind of the preamble or part one of kind of a series that's probably going to be somewhat like the What If I Told You series. It's based in, you know, real life stuff. It's not based on, oh, this is this thing in Pyromancer's head that he came up with. Like, no. This is an academic, you know, wrote this, and Pyromancer is reading it to kind of, and full credit will be given. Don't get me wrong. But it was linked to me by Shinzai, but he didn't write it, you know, so. So, Guthan says, by the way, Pyro, speaking of Tolkien, are you aware of how the dwarf tribes came to be in Middle-earth? And I was not. The in-universe creation mythos, I said I do not know that. And this is paraphrased, but he said basically the dwarves were first created by the Valar Aule, or Owl. I think it's Aule, who was known for being related to forging and such pursuits. So, Kaz'goroth. In an attempt to create a new race that could help fight against Morgoth, they were at first nothing more than automatons. Aule told them to move and they moved. Aule told them to jump and they jumped. Eru Iluvatar, who is the creator of everything, directly intervened and asked him why he was meddling with creating new life. So I ended up looking into this. Interesting. I said, sounds like initial Earthen. That's interesting. Iluvatar in this case would be Azeroth or more like Aman'thul. I'm still hung up on this one because I think that they would have you believe that it's Aman'thul. If Aman'thul commands the powers of light and void, I don't know. But Azeroth, as creator, I'm kind of leaning that direction. Iluvatar as Azeroth. That's what makes more sense to me. But I think they try to make it seem like Aman'thul would be Iluvatar. But I don't think that's the case. Then again, the Titans don't really try to make the claim. Like, they call themselves makers and creators, I guess. But they never say that one of them is like the creator, They're creators, but it's not like the maker, Aman'thul might be High Father of the Pantheon, but they're not referenced as that. Eru Iluvatar wouldn't intervene in the events. He would see how it begins and ends, but never put his own mark. Only his servants, the Valars, would make the changes in Songs of the Universe. So it wouldn't be Eru Iluvatar in this case, because Aman'thul has allegedly done direct divine intervention. So it would be Azeroth, I would say, who has so far not directly intervened in anything. Up until recently. Now she's granting her power, though, to those that she trusts. She's not doing it herself. So I think that that's very Eru Iluvatar, personally. The Vala Ole, or Auli, I don't know how the fuck, I should probably just look up how to say it, but he created the dwarves because he was impatient for the arising of the children of Iluvatar, elves and men, and he wished for children to love and instruct. So he wanted to have children of his own, and so he created dwarves. He created 7 dwarves and was teaching them the language he had devised for them, Khuzdul. But Aule was not Iluvatar, who had the flame imperishable, and his children were dumb, able to move and speak only if he wished so, and would remain motionless whenever Aule would think elsewhere. I think that this is interesting regarding the earthen creation of the dwarves, especially with the word Khuzdul. I thought Khuzdul, Kaz, that can't be a coincidence, right? I was like, probably is. Iluvatar confronted him for his impatience. Aule offered his creations to Iluvatar and was ready to break them in repentance, but Iluvatar accepted his offer and gave them life of their own. The dwarves started cowering and pleading for mercy, despite Aule's will. However, the father of the dwarves had to wait until the elves first arrived, and Aule laid them to rest in various places in Middle-earth, which is just like what happens to the Earthen, right? We're about to go to a whole different section of Earthen, because they were put in a whole different place. Kaz-Algar. So right here, the eldest of all Durin lay lone at Mount Gundabad in the north of the Misty Mountains. I'm not sure what that would be in World of Warcraft, but I'm sure there's lots of great options if it hasn't happened already. He later founded the line of the Longbeards, so there's probably something connected there, or Sigyn Tarag and Khuzdul. The dwarves, which were mostly friendly to the elves and men, mostly referred to as Durin's folk, were mostly referred to. His city was Khazad Dûm. Okay, when I saw that, Kaz, I was like, okay, look, guys, let me just put this into perspective, because sometimes people are really pretentious about this. I've been doing this for 10 fucking years. So long that I have talked about so many different things and inspirations that I have literally forgotten about what I've talked about. So yes, we have gone through the Lord of the Rings stuff. We have gone through Tolkien stuff years ago. but the perspective and knowledge difference, the gap that exists, totally fucking different now. So it's why when I'm going back through these things, it might seem like, you know, how do you not make this connection before? And it's because I didn't see the characters in WoW the way that I do now. So a lot of things have changed. I said, bruh, Khazad-dûm? Lamau? There's no way that's a coincidence. Also, Aule laid them to rest in various places in Middle-earth. That's the Earthen right there. And then it gets to this. 2 others were laid to rest in the Arid Luin, or Blue Mountains, and they founded the lines of the Broadbeams, and the Firebeards, who later lived in Novgorod and Belagost. The other forefathers of the dwarves were laid to rest in 2 pairs in Rune, lands at least as far east of Mount Gundabad as it lay east of the Blue Mountains. They founded the lines of the Iron Fists, like Iron Forge, Stiffbeards, the Black Locks, like the Black Rocks, the Stonefoots. These names, LMFAO, the fucking Broad Beams? You mean the Bronze Beards? I love it, dude. Iron Fists, Iron Forge, holy crap. Black Locks, Black Rocks. Yeah, I typed that. It was said that the 7 fathers would return to life after generations among their own folk. This did not mean reincarnation, however. Rather, the bodies of the fathers would be preserved, and their spirits would return to the bodies and live once more. Durin was known to return to life 6 more times. So there's some cool potential parallels here. Of the father of the dwarves, only Durin is said to have lain alone, which means it can be interpreted as referring to the fact that in older versions of the story, Durin alone had no female companion. References are made by Tolkien to the 13 dwarves created by Aule, Durin, the 6 pairs, but later it meant that Durin was indeed laid down to rest alone, while the other fathers were laid to rest as 3 pairs. In that same conception, Tolkien considered that there were other dwarves made that were just put to sleep because their fathers, Durin, would be again an exception, as he created his folk by gathering dwarves from other clans during his wanders. Because they're an exception, because they're a conglomeration of multiple. Also, Middle-earth lore split in 3 years. The first era when the sons of Fëanor fought against Morgoth and then him being imprisoned, right, destroying most of the land. Then second era, which was prime for Numenor Empire, that also fell and was sunken into the seas. And then the third era, where The Hobbit and Lord of the Ring take place. Right. And okay. So, that's a good point. And it does, I think, relate probably to the semblance of the 3 eras that we have, right? Primordial Azeroth, Kaldori Empire, everything post-Sundering, essentially. And I think that those 3 things kind of represent what you're saying. And it's during the rise of elves and then you have the rise of man after the fact. Like, a lot of this shit is pretty fucking related to Tolkien shit. So, yeah. Basically, what this is it's like, okay, so Kaz'goroth, theoretically, if we were to draw the parallel, Kaz'goroth goes to Azeroth and is like, yo, I really want to make dwarves. Because it's taken a long time for elves and man to come around. I'm going to make my own. He's like, makes his own little children. Eonar hears about this. She's like, what the fuck? I want to do that too. All right, Azeroth, can I make my own things? And Azeroth's like, okay, yeah, fine, fuck. All right, make some ends, okay? This is what happened. It's like the 2 children, and the one finds out that one got like a candy. And so now the other one wants a candy, even if they didn't even think about wanting a candy before. They're like, I want to do that too. Ents are the shepherds of the trees, as far as they were desired by Yavanna to protect the forest from orcs, dwarves, and other perils. The males were devoted to Orome, while the Entwives to Yavanna. They were created around the same time as the elves. The Eldar of the First Age loved to talk to everything and had tales of teaching the trees to talk. They gave them the desire to speak and taught them Elvish. Treebeard said the elves curing the Ents of their dumbness was a great gift that could not be forgotten. I think it's interesting. Before even Morgoth returned to the north, and the first Ents were not as wise or strong as in later times. So this is, before even Morgoth returned to the north, the first Ents were not as wise or strong as in later times. They developed a language, Entish, which was much simpler back then and had very small knowledge of other languages. On the matter of Ents, interesting how it's related to the creation on the dwarves too. And that's an interesting parallel. Yes, I said, you let him do it, now let me do this. Theoretically, it would suggest the creation of the earth and then subsequently the dwarves was used as a reason to convince someone else, probably Aman'thul, to let Aenar do tree stuff. That's fascinating. Let's say it was Aman'thul that they were going to for permission. I think that kind of makes sense because remember, Aenar plants this tree, Iluna here, so maybe they beseeched Ilun in this regard. But anyway, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. That's an interesting. It's things are never one-to-one, so keep that in mind. So there's something. There's a line of logic to follow. I think it makes sense because she'd plant this tree. Aman'thul got mad and ripped it out, right? So it's kind of like. It almost kind of seems like either he didn't give her permission and she got it from somewhere else, or he gave her permission and then she made something that he was really unhappy with. Guthan said, also fun fact, Sauron and Saruman used to be Maya under Aule. Which, so theoretically under Kaz'goroth. Sauron, huh? That's interesting. Sauron has some big parallels, I would say, with N'Zoth. And Saruman used to be Maya, right? He turned bad too. I said, but what she made wasn't orderly, so he tore it out. Anyway, back to Tolkien. Whether in the Bible or in the Silmarillion, Lucifer and Melkor are brought to life by a supreme being. All right, Chad, here's where it starts. Here we go. A monotheistic entity called God for the first one, and Eru Iluvatar for the second. It's important to note that in the mind of Tolkien, God and Iluvatar are the same entity, though the last one is fictional and the first set in an actual religion. They were created at the very beginning of all things, and both were given great splendor and power. I said, so Sargeras, son of Azeroth, if she's the creator. Guthan said, I'm glad to see we're talking about Tolkien. Sparked some good old theory crafting. Come to think of it, the old Night Elf Empire is starting to remind me of the Númenórean kingdom in some ways. I'm sure we'll have to get into that. God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that light was good. And he separated light from darkness. He called the light day, and the darkness night. So evening came, and morning came, the first day. For those who always wonder about the Tauran myth of creation, lol. Don't get me started on how the night and day cycle started in Middle-earth, because that's a doozy. I said, but it also alludes to the light and void in a way, which there's two V's right there, not sure what that's there. I said, oh, I'm getting there. This is a document comparing the stories of Lucifer and Melkor, so this is the document that I'd pulled up earlier. Guthan said, nice. It was a nice read. It's a nice read. You have a link, and then it gets linked by Shinzai again. I said, here we see that the angels referred as the morning stars were already existing when God was forging the world, and thus Melkor and Lucifer share a common origin, for that they both had a part in the creation as holy beings created by their God. Lucifer brought light during the creation, and Melkor had a part in the Anulindale? Anulindale? I don't know how to say it. Even as he was in the beginning, the greatest of the Aenar that took part in the music. And then, this gets linked. I said, so if Sargeras is the Lucifer and Melkor / Morgoth of WoW, he was a light bringer who was around during the forging of the world itself. If he shares that parallel, which is like, goes against what we're told, but I kind of believe it. I think that there are some things on this world that I question the origin of, and if they weren't Sargeras, then I think they're probably Azeroth, but things like dragons, it's kind of like interest me, I guess, in that regard. So if this is true, if this, then that. He said, holy shit, that's a long ass read. Okay, here's where I start to go off on this. I said, whereas Chronicle makes it appear as though none of them knew about the world of Azeroth, and the RPG lore makes it seem like Sargeras didn't know about it either, which is strange. Both creations implied a music where the children of God and of Iluvatar had a part even though music owns a more important part in one story than the other. Indeed, in the Silmarillion, the music is what brings the creation, and it is sang by the Aenir, while in the Bible, the music, even though sang by the angels, similar to the Aenir, is just part of the creation. It didn't bring it. Melkor knew a similar fate, for Tolkien was much inspired by the Angel of Dawn in the writing of his character. Of all the Aenir, Iluvatar gave to Melkor more than any other. For to Melkor among the Aenir had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. That line is interesting, because Sargeras wields a power that is allegedly the combination of all the cosmic forces. Isn't that fucking weird? He has Fel, which is something that, like, is pretty specific to the Legion. Jenzai, thank you so much for the 5 giftos, man. Most powerful and the highest ranked archangel. Yeah. He was the mightiest of them all, who took part in the music, and when the vision of Iluvatar was shown to them, he became the chief of those of the mighty that wished to go to Arda, which I would say is like the mortal world, probably, and to order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar. Then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thought and their desire towards that place. And of these, Melkor was the chief, even as he was in the beginning of the greatest of the Aenir that took part in the music. Even as he was in the beginning of the greatest, right? It's weird to say that. Those who later descended upon Arda were called the Valar, from Kenyavala, in the singular meaning angelic power, and the Valar in the plural meaning those with power. The powers. They were a distinct order of Aenir compared to those who stayed with their creator, and their aim was in the function of guarding and governing Arda in the name of Eru Iluvatar, and for the sake of his children. At first, Melkor was one of them. Furthermore, we find in both Christianity and the Silmarillion this idea of orders among the angels. Cherub were placed as second in the hierarchy of the angels, as were the Valar in the Silmarillion. These spiritual beings can be ordered from Aenir to Valar, then Maiar, those of the lesser Aenir. So that's their order of like station. Aenir, then Valar, then Maiar. Those of the lesser Aenir. Angels and Aenir are linked in their very nature, for they both are holy powers, exercising a similar role in the creation of their god, and so were Melkor and Lucifer. Both creations implied a music where the children of God and of Iluvatar had a part, even though music... I think I read this. Yeah, I read all these. Right. It's power, furthermore... Okay, here we go. Angels and Aenir are linked in their very nature, for they both are holy powers exercising a similar role in the creation of their god, and so were Melkor and Lucifer. Both entities share common traits of character, for both had a place of honor in the mind of their father, and both were given great might, as we see through their names and role. Lucifer was given the role of cherub, second highest order among the angels of God, an attendant and bearer of the throne of his creator that brought him great power and wisdom, and he was also set as the chief of the angels. Melkor was also set to be the chief of the Aenir, and of those that had a part in the music, and great knowledge and might was given to him, and from these gifts that were given to both of them, they took great pride and executed brilliantly the holy deeds of their makers. But it was at the time of their glory, and even as they were in this state, dark thoughts came out of their pride. Pride coming up real quick. Didn't take long for that to show up, did it? The most insidious and powerful of all of the Shah. Pride. But they had their part in the music. Lucifer and Melkor, in their very own separate tales, were both powerful angelic figures that dwelt alongside their god. And as we have seen, they were given a particular role and status by these all-powerful entities. The second reproachment we can find in the character of Lucifer concerning the one of Melkor is that from this power which was given to them, they gained great pride, but they also gained ambition that twisted their mind. Which is kind of what happened to Sargeras. Overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. Trust me, I know. Lucifer was envious of God, the Son, Jesus, and wanted his position. His highest position of archangel was not good enough for him. We're gonna get there. That's what you learned as a Christian. Yes, well, listen here. This arrogance of Melkor towards Iluvatar created a disorder in him, which is comparable to the pride of Lucifer, that led him to lawlessness, to anarchy, which made his thoughts wrong. I'm pretty sure fell in like another language. I want to say it's some like Scandinavian language or something. I want to say it literally means wrong, which is probably unrelated and just a coincidence, but it's kind of funny. This anarchy, this discord, came from the arrogance of Melkor, or Sargeras, to eagerly covet the power of creation of Iluvatar, and he ever sought it. He had gone often alone into the void places seeking for the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Jay chimes in, did I just tune into a Lord of the Rings essay? Stop, my penis can only get so erect. Strange thoughts he developed from his loneliness and his wandering in the void in search of the flame of creation, which is literally what happens in Chronicle. Sargeras, here, I'm gonna get there. I'm thinking it, so I'm saying it, but I'm gonna get there here. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own unlike those of his brethren. He put these wrong thoughts in his music, and then interwove it with the music of Iluvatar, and it brought discord. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him. I said, it makes me think the Titans weren't looking for just any world soul. Working this into WoW, Sargeras and Agrimar had allegedly decided that it would be easier to watch over the cosmos if they split up. That's why Sargeras went on his own, and during this long epoch of searching, he found the black and desiccated world which led to his downfall. I said, I wonder if the flame he found was not what he expected, and it scared him. Wandering in the void in search of the flame of creation. The fucking flame of creation? LMAO, okay, it's Azeroth. He also himself went into the Twisting Nether and explored it. And we've seen void entities and stuff like that come from the Twisting Nether. It's almost like Sargeras thought that he would find the flame of creation inside the realm of disorder. Which I think makes sense. Doesn't it? I can kind of understand that perspective. These are the first wrongs of Melkor that we can collate to the ones of Lucifer. We see that it is because of something that was not from Iluvatar that Melkor developed iniquity, as Lucifer did. This can be explained because of the imperfection that lies in all that is made by God. Indeed, in Christianity, God cannot create something that is as great and perfect as himself, for he was the first of all to be. Therefore, all that is created by God God's will necessarily owns imperfection of some kind. It is through this weakness that evil appears, and that the imperfection of the world is explained. The idea of an imperfect world explains why evil appeared in the creation of both Iluvatar and God, and why the two fallen spirits marred the creation of their father. But of this reflection of the origin of evil, we will talk later on. I said, wow, this is just like Farim's writings. Long have I scoffed at what I learned of the Titans or the Void Lords or the demons of the Nether. What I had learned of them. I had held Death's pantheon in higher regard, but now I know that they are just as limited. Truth lies not in one direction or another, but in their intersection. The first ones had parceled out all their gifts, but gave no child all of them. No wonder these offspring bickered with such incessant jealousy. Their very nature was one of denial. the 6 forces that pointed toward a 7th and yet denied it. For a long while I considered this seeming contradiction no more than another variable, an unknown waiting to be solved. It was both 6 and 7. The 6 were one and the 7th the other. Did they desire union? The song seemed to say otherwise. Both were, yet only one could be. The melody shifted. I shuddered at the shape it took. This was not a variable to be solved, it was a solution awaiting its opportunity. The song must not be allowed to end. Do the first ones still sing it? Truly, I do not know. But if they do not, who will? And then the nature of evil is the next thing they're discussing, so I just go to that. Hence, the creations of God and Iluvatar will obviously be imperfect. And this imperfection was found and expended by the pride of Lucifer and Melkor. Both gained great pride and grew great arrogance, for they coveted things that were not designed to them. Melkor wanted to bring things of his own imagination into being, and not only things from the thoughts of Iluvatar. He coveted the flame imperishable that is the Holy Spirit in Christianity. He said, fucking pride. It's always pride. God's own exposed flaw, which is expressed through Lucifer, is pride. Thornfield chimes in and says, exactly why perhaps it's the thing Norushin failed to really purge in mists. The Titans are nothing if not full of pride to the point of hubris. Where there is choice and will, Matt says, such things shall always exist. That is the root, the true root of evil. Everyone makes choices, and sometimes they choose the wrong thing. And I continued, in Tolkien et la religion, Leo Carathers explains that, and I cannot read this. This is the fire that Melkor coveted in order to bring life of his own in complete independence of Iluvatar. Like Melkor, Lucifer in his pride tried to be sufficient to himself and claimed the union with God, refusing freely his dominion. The issue of the great discord triggered by Melkor was the vision of Iluvatar, who unveiled to the Aenir the meaning of their song and the coming of the children of Iluvatar. And from this, Melkor made darker thoughts. This is like so fascinating to me because I think of Sargeras in this regard of like the great discord sown by what he did. The vision maybe that whatever he saw, it could have even been him who revealed it to the others that mortals in them were coming and would rise, and it fucking freaked him out. Lucifer and Melkor share a common purpose in their discord, for both wanted something that only their creator had. Lucifer wanted the throne of God himself. He wanted the power to rule over his kingdom. As for Melkor, he wanted the power of creation for himself, and to be a master of others, a power that only Iluvatar held. For he coveted Arda and all that was in it, desiring the kingship of Manwë and dominion over the realms of his peer. Even as they first were inclined to follow their creator and do good, the power they gained and the status they were given derived them from light to darkness, and they both rebelled against their creator. In the Silmarillion, we are told he began with the desire of light, but when he could not possess it for himself alone, he descended down into darkness, which can be applied to Lucifer as well, for it well describes the rise of his arrogance. But the rebellion of Melkor and Lucifer took a different shape in each case. Lucifer, in his arrogance, made war upon heaven, and many other angels he had converted to his cause followed him, as we are told in Matthew 25:42, the devil and his angels. Lucifer's war ended where it began, while on the part of Melkor, his rebellion starts in the domain of Iluvatar with his music, and ends in Arda. Like Lucifer, he converted other Aenir to his music, and his discord against the themes of Iluvatar, which we have literally seen Sargeras do with Agramar, converting angels.
We have seen before that the discord of Melkor was at first from his thoughts and his arrogant desire creating his things of his own. Even with his music, Melkor managed to match with the one of Iluvatar. He never overcame it. Even if with his music, Melkor managed to match with the one of Iluvatar, he never overcame it. Thus, the music of Melkor was ceased by Iluvatar himself, and Melkor was brought down from his pride into shame. And Melkor, filled with shame, of which came secret anger. This we can compare to the rebellion of Lucifer and the way it was ended. I brought you down in disgrace from the mountain of God. In Ezekiel 28:16, we are told that it was God that ended the rebellion of Lucifer. In the Silmarillion, it is Iluvatar who ended it. And thus we see that Lucifer and Melkor experienced the same feeling of shame, a disgrace due to their actions in heaven for the first one and the timeless halls for the other. Matt goes on to add, the quote doesn't quite include the full extent of that scene in the Silmarillion, adding, "Then Iluvatar spoke, and he said, Mighty are the Aenir. The mightiest among them is Melkor, but that he may know, and all the Aenir, that I am Iluvatar. Those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what ye have done. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite, or despot, however you pronounce it in this case. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." And I add as well, furthermore, both characters expressed in their rebellion their will of being master of others and taking the place of their creator. More than with the music, Melkor wished to dominate Arda from the vision of Iluvatar. And when permission came to descend upon it, Melkor was one of the first to do so. He then took part in everything that was done by his brethren Aenir that descended with him. This is where the two characters split from each other, for the rebellion of Melkor lasted in Arda, while the one of Lucifer ended in heaven. Once Melkor and his brethren came upon Arda, the anger he had developed from his shaming in the music was released, as he had a part in everything that was done. He twisted it to his own desires and his arrogance. He even went to declare himself king of Arda, and he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." But Melkor was confronted to the other Valar in his rebellion, and like Lucifer, Melkor lost his first war and fled in darkness. And Melkor fled and forsook Arda, and there was peace for a long time. Matt adds, it's the concept that evil designs and wicked choices, greater good may be created. Things like courage and heroism and the bonds of friendship and love. So, Melkor shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined. And so I respond to Matt saying, so like mortals were driven to bring about the most virtuous of aspects through the suffering wrought by the hand of evil, good can only exist through the defiance of the expressions of evil. Hope, love, and in truth he knew? For Iluvatar says, no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me. It was all part of the song? Indeed. If Azeroth is the true source of all creation as we believe, then all things, the good and the bad, come from her. The song of creation has highs and lows, and if only good choices were allowed, would they really be good? I said, I'm going to be honest, after looking at Farim's writings after this, I can't look at the 6 and 7 the same. In a way, the 6 were one, the 7th, the other. It's talking about the Valar and the Song of Creation, potentially, the Aenir as well, but that's just a side thought. I said, perhaps it does refer to the 6 forces as presented in WoW, the Titans being a part of it, the Song of Creation at the center. Did they desire union? The song seemed to say otherwise. Both were, yet only one could be. The melody shifted. I shuddered, the shape it took. This was not a variable to be solved, it was a solution awaiting its opportunity. He sent me this Neil deGrasse Tyson clip. So as we've said, balance, which likely rests in the heart of creation, is the force they deny. And if only evil choices were allowed, would they really be evil? Thornfield chimes in and says, on the note of, and if only evil choices were allowed, would they really be evil? He says, that kind of makes me wonder about the glaive link earlier, and we talked more about that. It's the Night Elven concept of being okay with imperfections and finding joy in the temporary and imperfect nature of life. Its name, Alara Shanu. And in that of understanding the cycle of all things, good and evil are part of the cycle. Can't have one without the other, though it doesn't have to be an equal balance per se. And I add in older quotes, the burning ones kept balance, they are lost now, lost. And then for him once again, because I have seen how fragile the pattern is, how delicate the scales that keep the six forces in balance. And if the jailer, in his act of malevolence, left behind but the most imperceptible of cracks in that pattern, then I fear what is tiny now will only grow, until the balance itself is prone to be shattered by another force applying relentless pressure. I pray that the first ones anticipated such an eventuality, that they would leave measures in place to preserve their grand design, unless their design was never meant to endure. And that is the possibility that haunts me. And it's probably true, because it can't be perfect. It has to have, the inherent nature of it is its imperfection, which means that it probably has to end and in some capacity by the creator be remade like Eru Iluvatar, but in a way more wondrous than even the most arrogant of her children would conceive of. We're probably not going to get anything like what any of the individual cosmic forces or anything fighting for wants. She's going to probably remake it into something so significantly beyond the bounds of what they would even understand. If it is a cycle, and we're just nearing the end of it, then it's inevitable that these things probably happen anyway. We're just at the end of the universe. So, kind of seems like that's kind of where we exist right now. We're kind of like existing at the end of the universe, which is fucking crazy.